So let's tackle a little bit about those certifications that you think might be the most worthwhile right now.
Mm-hmm.
And let's start with Azure.
Okay, so from a Microsoft Azure point of view, I like the foundation. I'm not a big fan for, well, so let me take that back. There's two types of paths that you're going to take. One is for the business person, and one is for a technical person. There's multiple paths after you get down that path, but for the business person, I think if you're working in a technology field today, you should be taking the foundations level courses, which is AZ 900. It should be a requirement for anyone who's working in a foundational course or in a cloud-based delivery mechanism. AZ 900 should be required. We require it of our project managers, our what we call our engagement managers, which are the people who are connected. Like a lot of people call them account managers. We expect to be able to talk and know what a virtual network is and what the impact is to a project, to a deployment, or to our managed services team. If a Azure Active Directory goes offline, we absolutely expect people to be able to track to that. So then the next step, after you get that, and AWS has their foundation certificate, AWS Foundation Certification as well. It's called their practitioner certification. I think that's, again, depending upon your focus, they have one of those as well. But focusing specifically on Azure, AZ 900 should be required of everyone in a business perspective. When you go down the technical path, there's two, and they're interchangeable to prove that you know the basic foundations of Microsoft Azure. And that's either AZ 104 or AZ 204. AZ 104 is for the typical systems engineering, infrastructure, the people like me that I call a server bubba. AZ 104 is really around proving that you understand the foundational security, infrastructure, and connectivity, and compute, storage, that kind of stuff, to understand, to deploy this environment and bring it online. How do I deploy things to be able to deliver and make an environment available to my developers or to my business team or to something like that? So that's step one. 204 is the developer side of that. So in all cases, you have this kind of coin that you have to flip and say, is one the other, or are both important? I would say if you're a pure .NET developer, go to, or a pure developer, whether it's .NET or something else, go down the 204 path. If you're a pure systems engineer, go down that path. Sorry. I would say if you're a pure systems engineer, go down 104. I think if you're a DevOps engineer, you have to do both. I think you have to have 104 and 204. And the reason for that, I think probably more so than anything else, is because you have to be able to understand what's the impact to both your infrastructure as you're deploying it, and how do you get that code on. So that is really the next step for me, is to really determine, I say three paths. There's infrastructure, there's development, and there's DevOps. You have to do one, the other, or both, depending upon what your path is. The next logical steps for me is, I think Azure 300 and 301 is what it used to be, but I think it's now 101 and 304 is what it is now. The solutions architect expert path for Azure. That's really, to me, a defining characteristic between someone who knows the foundation and the platform and someone who I can take and move to a next level. When I move to that next level, you think what I always call three-dimensional. It's not just about, I need to create a web server, I need to create a API environment, I need to create a database environment. It's more than that. Now it's, how do I do all of that while at the same time maintaining my security standards and my PCI compliance or my HIPAA compliance, whatever that case may be. So there's a lot of, I'm going to say, that architect role kind of fills in the characteristics. I would say there's two more components to that, when you start to talk about growing your knowledge set, AZ 400, if as a DevOps person, take it. take AZ400. If you've taken 104 or 204, take AZ400. That gets you that DevOps expert, and that becomes really valuable over time. The other side of it would be AZ500 if you want to have a security focus. Want to really focus on whether it's infrastructure security or application security. How do I use Key Vault in their environments? Those types of things become incredibly valuable, and you'll start to see that we're breaking it now into a little bit more focused environments. You have an architecture environment, you have your developer or DevOps specific environment. Now you have your security component as well. Those for me are kind of what define what I would say as a tier 2 engineer. That entry level, 100 level and 200 level environment, whether it's developer or infrastructure engineer, that's really defining what that entry level tier 1 type engineer is. The next specialization on top is going to be that 300 level for me. That's going to define someone who's a little bit more senior, been working in a little bit longer. Typically for 3 to 5 years, 4 is kind of like the sweet spot of experience, and I look for those people all the time. And then there's a bunch of specialization offshoots, and there's the data path. If you really want to go into data processing and do cloud data model, and you can get I think if I were starting today, not 20 something years ago, I love the data capabilities that Azure provides, and that's probably what I would look at. That's probably where I would go, is the ability to do Cosmos and Synapse and Azure SQL and managed instances, and how do I get Postgres and MySQL to all interact together, and how do I integrate them using Data Factory. All of that's covered in the cloud data model tests, the DP 200 and 201 exams, I believe is what they are. Those to me are kind of like unicorns right now. While I have those certifications, every time I talk to someone, I was like, have you considered taking them? They're like, oh, that's way beyond where I'm at. They're hard to find. If I were looking at it, that's exactly where I would want to go. I'd be looking for where are there not a lot of certifications, and I'm going to go fill that role. I would love to be able to know more about AI, and Microsoft Azure has some really cool AI certifications in there as well now too. I don't have time. And that has kind of become the next interesting thing for me, is what can I squeeze into the amount of time that I have. So there's dynamic certifications, there's Microsoft 365 certifications, there's Azure certifications, and that's just one vendor. That doesn't include all the other stuff that goes into it. So that it gets interesting quickly to be able to go through that.
Yeah, that's interesting. You bring up the fact that and it's probably a worthwhile exercise, somebody to take a moment and look at the landscape and see where there might be some lacking certifications, because and you might even want to talk to your superior to see what the company would benefit from.
Yeah, and that's in a lot of cases, if someone were to come to me today and say, hey, I want to go down the DevOps path, and I've actually had this conversation with one of our employees. I want to go down the DevOps path, and my title is Chief Evangelist, so I get to go and talk to people all the time about in kind of almost more of a sales and technology evangelism role. I'm not in the delivery team so much anymore, but he kind of likes what I do, and he's like, how do I get to do the same thing that you're doing? And I was like, well, then you have to do a bunch of things that might not even show up on a certification exam, like being able to sit down in a video like this and do these things. Or there's a lot to it when you start to look at what's the right path. How do I get there? Universally, I think you're going to see that data is going to be the next major. We heard about data scientists and data everything a few years ago. There's a great Netflix documentary right now that is out called The Social Dilemma, and it talks about data and what is the right amount of data to be shared and consumed and used to make decisions.
Thank you for watching Stratum's Cloud Interrupted. If you like what you see, please subscribe, like, and share this video.